Okay, we're going to officially start our program tonight. We're so excited to have Mosab Abu Toha here to read from and discuss his new collection of poems, Forest of Noise. My name is Raymond Latta. I am the spokesperson for Revolution Books here in New York City. You are here at the Political, Intellectual, and Cultural Center of a movement for a real revolution. A revolution guided by the new communism developed by the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian. And this is a whole new framework for human emancipation. The scientific method and approach, the vision, the strategy, the morality to make a truly liberating revolution in today's world, to bring about a society and world in which human beings can truly flourish, a world worthy of our humanity. So you are here at Revolution Books, and here we are, brothers and sisters and others. This fascist lunatic, Donald J. Trump, has been advocating over the last few days the forced expulsion of 2.1 million Palestinians from Gaza. He's used the phrase, clear them out. They can't return. They should not return. He has been peddling the absurd and obscene notion of turning Gaza into some kind of resort, gambling den and colony, a strategic emplacement for U.S. imperialism, and he has been threatening military force to bring this about. Never mind the people and land, the Palestinian people, and the land that is rightfully theirs. No, he wants to erase that. And in this situation, in this context, this bookstore, joining with the RevComs, has been raising these three slogans: no more U.S.-Israeli genocide in Gaza, stop Trump's dangerous lunatic schemes and the threats against the people of the Middle East. And in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. That's what we have to take up and act on. And it's against this backdrop that I am so honored to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Mosab Abu Toha. Many of you in the audience and many of you who are watching this live stream know of his work. He is a great Palestinian poet, short story writer, essayist. Some of you may have seen his letters from Gaza in the New Yorker. He founded the Edward Said Library in Gaza, the only English language library, which was destroyed by the motherfucking Israeli Zionists. This is the backdrop for tonight's evening. And Mosab, I have to say, his poetry is urgent, it is harrowing, it is beautiful, and at times, it is funny. It is a remarkable work, Forest of Noise. He is a remarkable poet, a courageous human being, and I am so happy to bring him to the stage and for you to take in his poetry. We will let him go as long as he wants to go. We will perhaps have 2 questions, comments for me. We want to open it up to you as soon as possible, and he'll stay for as long as he can stay to sign books. So with that, I am handing the stage over to Mosab Abu Toha. Let's give him a warm round of applause.
thank you so much for the powerful words. Thank you, Revolution Books, for this space, for this spirit, for this very essential venue for revolutionary ideas, revolutionary voices. And revolutionary, I don't mean voices that want to change the order of the world, but to bring it back to order. Okay, so I don't know how to begin, but these are very bleak days for everyone. We are listening to this man trying not only to deprive people of the most needed things that they need to survive, but he is threatening to just drive them out. And by the way, I mean, so many people in Gaza wanted to leave Gaza before October 7th. But leaving, I mean, everyone can leave his country and, travel and learn and go back. But for us now, this is not about leaving Gaza. It's about not being able to return if this is going to happen the way he is proposing it. I mean, I've never seen any kind of discourse around Gaza the way, or Palestine, because I don't want to only talk about Gaza, because Gaza is just one part of Palestine. So when we talk about the current situation, we shouldn't only focus on Gaza. I mean, by the way, it's called the Gaza Strip. It's not even Gaza, it's the Gaza Strip. It means that this land, the 141 square miles, it's just a strip of land of a city that was called Gaza before the occupation. So this is, even the name itself tells you that it's not the whole of Gaza. And now what they are doing is trying to take, I mean, they were going to take some kilometers from Gaza. And now we hear in the Israeli media that for each so-called hostage, if he dies in Gaza after today, they are going to take 5 kilometers of the land. Well, I mean, if this is going to apply to what's happening to our brothers and sisters in the Israeli dungeons, then we are going to take back our land. And more countries, maybe here in the United States, if we are allowed to. Right? Because we have more than 7,000 Palestinian prisoners, some of whom have been in prison for decades, not for a year. By the way, today we just heard about Dr. Mosab Abu Toha, because just today, I mean, I was on the subway and I read what his family said, that Dr. Mosab Abu Toha has been tortured by the Israeli forces. But no one is I mean, does Trump know about Dr. Mosab Abu Toha? Does he know even that we had hospitals in Gaza? Does he know that we have human beings there? I mean, he's talking about Gaza as if it's, his grandfather's deserted tent, in a land that no one knows about. It is disgusting. It is, I mean, I don't want to say this word, dehumanizing, we have been dehumanized for a long time. But I mean, he talks about us as if it's his father's land. As if it's as if we were his father's property, that he could just move us around and, okay, Jordan and Egypt, we know that you will going to take these Palestinians eventually. I mean, if they do want to take us, we are not going anywhere, because that's the only place that we know. And I said that in one of my first posts in response to his bullshit. We don't want to just live. I mean, did I call you Trump? Did I tell you, I want to live beautifully? No, I didn't even complain to you, by the way. We just want to live on our land. That's it. It's not a matter of living a beautiful life, peaceful life. No. A peaceful life should be a peaceful life on our homeland, not elsewhere. Not even in this country, because this country doesn't even belong to him. So these are just some comments that just came out of my mouth, being in this space. I'm going to read some poems from Forest of Noise, and the poems, half of these poems were written before October 7th, and the other half was written after, whether before I was abducted by the Israeli forces in November 2023 or after I was released And when I was released, they dropped me at a checkpoint in Gaza City on the Salah ad-Din street. And you know what I asked the Israeli soldiers before they dropped me at the checkpoint? I told them, where is my wife and kids? Because they took me away from my wife and kids, and I didn't know at the time whether they were alive or not. Because they could have been killed in an airstrike on the street, or they could have been killed in the school shelter where they were sheltering in Deir al-Balah in southern Gaza. So I told them, can you help me find my wife and kids? I literally asked them that when I was in the car with them. And they didn't say anything. They didn't say, we hope they are alive, or no. And then when they stole my money and my credit and debit cards, I told them, I need money. You stole my money, give me kesef. Kesef means money in Hebrew. You stole my money, give me some money because I want to take a taxi to look for my wife and kids. And I even didn't tell them to get me some winter clothes for my kids, because when I was abducted, I had to drop the backpack in which I stuffed some of my children's winter clothes. It was November, and there were no clothes even coming into Gaza, by the way. Because there are so many things that we don't talk about, when we talk about the genocide. We just talk about, the number of the people who were killed, the number of hospitals, the number of schools. But we don't talk about, that children didn't have enough warm clothes. That people didn't have mattresses in their tents. So we know that people live in tents. But we don't know what was inside the tents, or what is still, because some people still live in tents. We don't have to ask these questions. And Trump doesn't know about any of these things. So, we are all waiting for the day when Palestine is free and we will hear so many poems, so many short stories from writers, from children, because these children's, the age of my children, I have 3 children, 9, 8, and 5. These children will still have memories, even when they grow up at the age of 20 or 30, they will start talking. And if it wasn't about their experiences, they will start talking about how they felt, or what they heard from their uncles, what they remember. Because our feelings are not only about what we experienced firsthand, but also about what we saw in the eyes of the other people, our uncles who are now in Gaza, looking for medicine or food or water, or who are asking, so many times, I'm not reading poems, why? I don't know. So many times when I talk to my friends in Gaza, they ask me, Mosab, what's going to happen? As if I know, because I'm in the States, they think that I know so many things. They think because I live in New York City, which is close to the DC, the White House, I know some information. Sometimes I would not call them for days, because I don't want to tell them I don't know. And I think one of the most horrible feelings I had is that when I was in Gaza, I couldn't protect so many friends of mine, so many students of mine, so many relatives of mine. And now when I moved here in this country, I couldn't help them either. So what kind of feelings do you have when you are with your mother and father in the classroom, in the shelter, and you couldn't protect them from death? And now when you are in the country that is supplying the killing machines, you can't help them either or save their lives. And many times while I was here, I had some connections with some people who had some friends in the past administration, which was useless. One time there was an airstrike that killed my wife's uncle and his wife and their 3 daughters. One daughter was killed with her husband and their 5 children. And we believed that there were some people who were still alive under the rubble. And by the way, this is new. That airstrike was in October last year, so 4 months from today. And until today, 30 people were killed in that airstrike that destroyed 4 houses. And until now, they haven't been able to find the bodies of 15 people. They dug through the rubble and there is no trace. What kind of life are we living? Not only our beloveds were killed, but we can't even find them to bury them, to visit their graves one day, or to take our children or our children, okay, let's go and read Al-Fatiha, one of the chapters in the Holy Quran. Read it, because we read it when we stand at the grave of our loved ones or anyone. So we read Al-Fatiha. So there is no even a grave for this loved one, to read Al-Fatiha and feel like you visited them. And sometimes we feel guilty because we couldn't find this person and bury him or her. And Trump doesn't know about any of these things. He just cares about removing the rubble. But come on, man. I mean, there are people who are now part of the rubble itself.
Oh.
Why don't you just give us a hand? And we don't need your hand. May God cut your hand. Give us some help, to find these people who were killed and who are still buried under the rubble. This is the first thing that we expect anyone who is in power, because this man has power. Okay, we need to use your power. Until now, they haven't let in Gaza the equipment that is necessary to remove the rubble. It's been now about 3 or more weeks after the ceasefire came into force, and still no heavy equipment to remove the rubble. And there are 2 main streets in Gaza. One is called Al-Rashid Street to the west of Gaza City, and one is called Salah ad-Din to the east of Gaza City. One street, Al-Rashid, was supposed to be for people who are returning back and forth between south and north on foot. And I think 2 days ago, it was supposed to be also for vehicles. But so far, Israel hasn't allowed any vehicles to take that road. So that's why Hamas think, I'm not a spokesperson of Hamas, but these are the terms of the ceasefire. They didn't allow any vehicles so far to drive on the Rashid Street. And this is a violation of the ceasefire. So now, who is going to punish Israel for violating this condition of the ceasefire? But now look, when someone from Gaza, let's say, violates the ceasefire deal. Do you know how they violated it? Someone, instead of walking on the Rashid Street, took his donkey cart or he was targeted in an airstrike and he was killed. And it happened many times. This is a violation of the ceasefire when someone, instead of walking on the Rashid Street, he took to his donkey cart or his horse cart, and he was not even stopped by anyone or any. He was not even called, oh, you are taking the wrong way. No. Israel's way of telling people that they were wrong by firing a rocket at them. But now let's say, what if Israel did something similar? What are the Palestinians allowed to do? And we have one last thing before I start reading poems. We have never heard any leader associating the word right with the Palestinian people. Because all the time we say Israel has the right to exist, Israel has the right to defend itself, Israel has to whatever. But have you ever heard the word the Palestinian people have the right to something? Why? I mean, why don't we have any rights even? Even when Rafah was because Rafah was a red line sometime before May 2024. It was a red line. So one thing, if this administration or the past one, because I don't want to talk about this one, the past one, the Biden administration, one thing that that of course they were not going to do it, but one thing that they could have said was, the people of Rafah have the right to defend themselves because it was a red line. Okay, now Israel is going into Rafah. Why haven't you said that people in Rafah, not Hamas, people like me, okay, they are going to invade my neighborhood and they were going to destroy my house. Do I have any right to defend myself in the face of these cruel people? We haven't heard any such thing. So this is one thing, that we have to highlight when we talk about the genocide. It's not only the killing of us, but even depriving us of the right even to defend ourselves. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. There's a poem called Gaza Notebooks, Gaza Notebook 2021-2023. So I'm going to read some parts of this poem. The bomb, when it pounded the sea, made an eye socket beneath the sand. The fish thought the sea had been crying forever. She asked her teacher, if there are 4 directions, then why do we have only 2 feet? No one at home, so I'm talking about the Nakba 1948. And now so many things that I wrote about 1948 now applies to what's happening in Gaza. No one at home, the doorknob, only dust touches it now. Pots grow parched. Frying pans miss the smell of olive oil. Clotheslines everywhere pine for soap scent. The flower pot, the window, the key, the language. The language misses the people who speak it, so many of whom have been killed or have been even traumatized to speak about what happened to them. So I don't want to explain my point. Okay. Stones of house after the explosion get amnesia. Now I'm talking about my house, because at the time when I wrote this part of the poem, our house was not destroyed. Our house was destroyed in an airstrike. A 4-story building was destroyed in an airstrike on October 28th, 2023, just a few days before October 7th. So I was just talking about a house, but now it is my house. Stones of house after the explosion get amnesia. Some forget they were in a wall in a bedroom or a kitchen or a bathroom. Some in a ceiling. Some forget they sat behind photo frames for years. A few stones forget they were stones, those hit by the bomb. Here, about the camp. Do you know how many camps there are in Gaza? There are 8 refugee camps. One of them, or maybe 2, the Rafah refugee camp has been obliterated. And the same for the Jabalia refugee camp, where I was sheltering with my wife and kids and my parents and my siblings and their children, and my wife's family also. So the Jabalia camp, the largest refugee camp in the Gaza Strip, home to about 100,000 people, was wiped out. The last time I was in Jabalia was on November 19th. And that's the day when I was abducted by the Israeli forces. I took a donkey cart with my wife and kids, and we headed to the Salah ad-Din street, and then I was abducted. So there have been some photos here and there, and I could recognize the street where I was staying with my wife and kids. And there were only 2 buildings standing. And then there was a video of these 2 buildings blown up by the Israeli forces. So this one is about, and I was born in a refugee camp. So, by the way, something that is also absent, and I'm starting to hear people focusing on it, is that while talking about, moving Palestinians in Gaza to some other places, it's important to emphasize the fact that 70% of the population in Gaza are refugees. 70%. So out of the 2.2, by the way, so there were 2.2 million people in Gaza before October 7th, and it's still around that number because children were born. I forgot what I wanted to say. 70% of the population in Gaza are refugees. So instead of sending people to Egypt and Jordan, why don't you do the right thing? Bring these people back to their original home cities and villages. For example, I'm from Jaffa, and that's the name of my daughter. I want my daughter to live in her name, Jaffa. And by the way, Jaffa, Haifa, Akka, Jerusalem are much closer than Jordan and Egypt. Yeah. And these are not even suggestions, by the way. This is our right to return.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not even a suggestion. We're not suggesting, oh, would you, I have a good idea. What about, we go to Yafa. No, I'm not suggesting. This is international law. Anyone who has been moved out by force from his house have the right, not even to return, to be helped if he couldn't. He has the right to be helped out to make his return. Now what's happened is the opposite. They are even pushing us away farther and farther from Yafa, Haifa, Akka, Jerusalem, Nasra, ila akhirih, etc. So just, this is, I can't imagine a more unjust world. I can't. So this part is about the refugee camp. In the camp, house, small, power off, humid. Drone sounds buzz in through bullet holes. To have walls is a blessing. Outside, young and old spend most of the night in the street. In the camp, a street can become a living room. Talking, watching cats and mice scavenging through trash for cheese or meat. Rooms inside, drawers for tired souls, temporarily stored. And we were hoping that we were sitting in these small rooms, because the houses in the refugee camp were something like bedrooms. They were not like high-rise buildings or even second-floor buildings. No. They were just rooms. This is the house I was born in Ashati refugee camp in 1992. It was just 3 rooms attached together. That's the house in the refugee camp. But over the years, people started to build up because they had more children. So we were thought that we were just like, our souls were stored in these rooms temporarily until we could return. This poem is called "My Son Throws a Blanket Over My Daughter." That was written in May 2021. Or it was written about what happened in May 2021 when Israel attacked Gaza for 11 days. And by the way, that was the first Israeli assault on Gaza, which my children witnessed, and which I witnessed as a father. So for them it was the first Israeli assault. But for me also, it was the first assault that I witnessed as a father of 3 children. So yeah, I had this video on my phone. I still have it, of we were all sitting together in the inner hallway because it was farther from the windows. If there is an airstrike, we would be in the middle of the house, away from the shrapnel. So we were sitting in the inner hallway, and then there was a bombing, and my daughter Yafa, she was 4 and something, and she said, "Oh, bomb!" And then her older brother Yazan, so this is in poem by the way, but so he throws a blanket over his sister, and he says, "You can hide now." My son throws a blanket over my daughter. Gaza, May 2021. At night, at home, we sit on the floor, close to each other, far from the windows and the red lines of bombs. Our backs bang on the walls whenever the house shakes. We stare at each other's faces, scared yet happy that so far our lives have been spared. The walls wake up from their fitful sleep, no arms to wipe at their blurry eyes. Flies gather around the only lit ceiling lamp for warmth in the bitter night, cold except when missiles hit and burn up houses and roads and trees. The neighborhood next to us, where Yazan learned to ride his bike, scorched. Every time we hear a bomb falling from an F-16 or an F-35, our lives panic. Our lives freeze, somewhere in between, confused where to head next. A nightmare, a graveyard, a hospital. I keep my shivering hand on my wristwatch, ready to remove the battery if needed. My 4-year-old daughter Yafa, wearing a pink dress given to her by a friend, hears a bomb explode. She gasps, covers her mouth with her dress's ruffles. Yazan, her 5.5-year-old brother, grabs a blanket warmed by his sleepy body. He lays the blanket on his sister. "You can hide now," he assures her. And this is for a friend who loved this poem today. No art. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Elizabeth Bishop. You know everything will come to an end. The sugar, the tea, the dried sage, the water. Just go to the market and restock. Even the shadow will abandon you when there is no light. So just keep things that require only you. The book of poems that only you can decipher. The blank map of a country whose cities and villages only you can recognize. I've personally lost 3 friends to war, a city to darkness, and a language to fear. This was not easy to survive, but survival proved necessary to master. But of all things, losing the only photo of my grandfather under the rubble of our house was a real disaster. And you can tell from this poem that it was written before October 7th. Because if you read my first poetry collection, and I hope you will do, I talk about 3 friends of mine who were killed in 2014, Ammar, Azzad, and Ismail. So in the poem I was talking about these close friends. But if this poem, and this is the case for, of course, so many other writers, for me at least, if I was to rewrite this poem, I mean, some details would be different. The numbers would be different. The feelings, of course, could be different. Yeah, so I've personally lost 3 friends to war, a city to... I mean, by the way, I didn't tell Trump, that my grandfather's grave is in Gaza. So what will happen to my grandfather's grave in Gaza? I mean, I didn't meet him in my life because he died before my father got married. So what will happen to my grandparents, graves? I don't know. Will Egypt or Jordan take them? I don't know. So, yeah. So the suggestion, his suggestion doesn't make sense. That's why, So there are so many other reasons. We are looking for Palestine. This is the title of one poem. We are looking for Palestine. The sun rises and moves around. It sets to visit other places, and we are looking for Palestine. The birds wake up and look for food. They chirp on the blossoming trees laden with fruit, with peaches, apples, apricots, and oranges. I love oranges. And we are looking for Palestine. The sea waves lap against the shore. They glitter and dance in the fishers' boats, and we are looking for Palestine. People travel to relatives and friends. I'm talking about you and so many other people. People travel to relatives and friends. They book round-trip tickets, stuff their suitcases with gifts and books and clothes, and we are looking for Palestine. Sir, we have no passable, we have no airports and seaports, no trains, no highways. We have no passable roads, sir. We do have crutches and wheelchairs, young men with 1 or no legs, no longer able to work as if there was work. We travel to the West Bank or Egypt for surgery. It seems now like we are not going for surgery. We travel to the West Bank or Egypt for surgery, even to set a broken leg. But we need a permit to enter, sir. Now Trump is getting the permit for us. Now we need a permit to enter. We stuff our suitcases with pictures and memories. They feel very heavy on the ground. We can't carry them, neither can the roads. They scar the surface of the earth. We get lost in the present, past, and future. When a child is born, we feel sad for him or her. A child is born to suffer here, sir. In Palestine, our dark is not safe. In Palestine, children always cry. If we want to travel, we leave many times. In Gaza, we leave via either Rafah or Erez, a hard escape to make. So we search for the visa interview. Cairo, Istanbul, Amman, but not in Palestine. We don't have embassies there. The one in Jerusalem is farther than the Andromeda galaxy. Andromeda is 2.5 million light years away, but our years are always heavy and dark. It would take trillions of years. Sir, we are not welcome anywhere. Only cemeteries do not mind our bodies. We no longer look for Palestine. Our time is spent dying. Soon, Palestine will look for us, will search for us, for our whispers, for our footsteps, our fading pictures, fallen off, blown up walls. I've never lived in a Palestinian village. Gaza, Gaza doesn't have villages. It has towns and cities, but not like villages in Palestine or Palestine before the occupation and also the West Bank. So this is my sense of the Palestinian village. On the hill in the village, you can chock the wheels of your vegetable cart with a stone your grandfather once used to crush time, or smash garlic with a stone your grandmother used as a doorstop. You can lounge on a wicker chair near a pomegranate tree where a canary never tires of singing. You can dig a hole with your hands and find an earthworm breathing the freshness of soil revived by yesterday's rain. You can make tea with sage or mint. If a neighbor or a passerby smells it, an invitation to join is extended. You put more cups on the table. You walk to the garden and pick more fresh sage or more mint. Thanks. On the eve of my 22nd birthday, after Yusuf Komuniaka, I would have to say that the first part is something that really happened. So there are two thanks in the poem. The first thank is a real thank to my mother. Thanks to my mother, always, but especially when she called for me to join them at the table just seconds before shrapnel cut through the window glass where I stood watching distant airstrikes. My mother's voice, the magnet of my life, swaying my head just in time. Plumes of smoke choked the neighborhood. It was night, and when we ran into the street, Mother forgot the cake in the oven, the bomb smoke mixed with the burnt chocolate and strawberry. And thanks to the huge clock tower's bell, which saved my life. I was crossing the street and my head glued to my phone, never heeded the honk of cars and the wheels of vans screeching onto the rough tarmac. The bell tolled for me, and I was talking about Ernest Hemingway, but I didn't mention this in the poem. So that bell tolled for me. Sorry, death, but it was the eve of my 22nd birthday, and I had to be by the sea and listen to the lapping of waves, the sound I last heard before my birth. Library. The first time I left Gaza, it was 2019, and then I returned in February 2021. And of course, the first place I would check on is my library. This poem is about this. My library. My books remain on the shelves as I left them last year, but all the words have died. I search for my favorite book, Out of Place, for Edward Said. I find it lying lonely in a drawer next to the photo album and my old Nokia phone. The pen inside the book is still intact, but some ink drops have leaked. Some words breathe its ink. The pen like a ventilator for a dozen words, a dozen patients. Home, Jerusalem, the sea, Haifa, the rock, the oranges, the sand, the pigeon, Cairo, my mother, Beirut, books, the rock, the sea, the sea. I will read one poem that I published after the book came out. So this poem is not in the book, and then I will go back to the poems in the book. So the whole of this poem was written after October 7th, and it's called A Hand is No Longer a Hand. So these are small poems, sometimes bigger than small. After the airstrike near a mulberry tree and some wild plants, they found the unmoving body of a boy. An eye was completely closed, the other was half open, watching for any piece of shrapnel that could kill him again. In my city, the army rounded up all the men, forced them to stand against the wall of the primary school. The hands raised, touched the newly painted bricks as if getting ready to play the piano before the bullets drummed on shivering heads and backs. During the airstrikes, we sat on the tiled, dusty floor, stock still as pills in a bottle in a pharmacy in a town where no one gets sick, where everybody's dead. This is something that I wrote after I watched a video of this boy. So it is a real poem. Every poem is real, but this one is really describes this moment. Not much imagination. I look at his wrist. It is crushed, nearly severed. And then at his shoulder, a bone is fractured. He is 4 years old. I say to my wife, "Oh, look, how brave he is. He's not crying. No pain, no tears, even with no parents beside him." I set my eyes on his face. His eyes are not moving. His heart is not beating. He is taking a rest. So this poem, and so many of you watched videos and pictures of dogs and cats feeding on the bodies of people who were left in the street because no one could go and retrieve the bodies from the streets because Israel wants to feed the dogs. A hand is no longer a hand as long as it does not find another hand to shake, as long as it does not find food to share with others, as long as it does not find a pen to write, as long as it's the only meat a dog can find to eat, as long as it goes missing forever. Is this really it? Us waking up every morning, tell you about a massacre that happened overnight? Is our only job to report on our deaths, film our cut-off bodies, and now, of course, our job is to respond to Trump and, the foolishness of what he's... And now it's our job, we forget about the genocide itself, now he's talking about our right to remain. Is our only job to report on our deaths, film our cut-off bodies, and ask you for help? When do you wake up? Is it okay with you to wake up? To find your house on fire? To find your child charred? To find your wife in a hospital with no medicine? To find your neighborhood a heap of rubble? To not wake up? Wake up! Enough watching us while sitting on a chair or reclining on a couch. We are drowning in your silence. We are screaming, but you took off your ears. You put them in your earbud cases. We see the blood. We see the blood as it gushes from the cases. The blood is our cries, our tears, our blood. You get displaced, you get wounded, yet survive. You jump off your cot when a missile hits the hospital. You shelter in a tent. You get displaced again. You get displaced again. And again on crutches. on a wheelchair, you get gazened a zillion times. If we stay in our houses, they bum us. If we shelter in a school, they bum us. If we run to a hospital, they bum us. If we move into a tent, they bum us. If we go to the toilet, they bum us. If we run from an airstrike, they bum us. If we stay like a tree or temporarily leave like a leaf in the fall, they bum us. But spring will come, and those who bum us will find no bums near among the flowers. We will be on the trees, bathing in the sun, and those who bum us, will have no sun, no place to rest, no legs to run.
Amen.
This poem is about a picture I saw. Yeah, it's about a picture I saw. He never woke up. I can see a juicer, a mattress, a blanket, what remains of a closet, what remains of a basket, and maybe a potato or an onion. The dust makes it difficult to distinguish a potato from an onion. But I can distinguish death. I can see it in the open mouth, in the closed eyes. I can see every one of us under the rubble. Okay, I will read one poem from my first book before I end with maybe some poems from the... How many of you read the first book? Okay, so it's good to read some poems. This is a good reason to read. So the first poem, it's one of the important poems to me in the book, because it's something like a dictionary, but it is a Palestinian dictionary of survival and death at the same time. So I'm going to read just some parts because it is a dictionary, so I'm not going to open the dictionary and read all of it, otherwise you will hate language. Okay. Palestine, AZ. A. How many of you know this one? Okay, so that's a good reason to continue. A. An apple that fell from the table on a dark evening, when man-made lightning flashed through the kitchen, the streets, and the sky, rattling the cupboards and breaking the dishes. Am is the linking verb that follows I in the present tense, when I'm no longer present, when I'm shattered. B. A book that doesn't mention my language or my country and has maps of every place except for my birthplace, as if I were an illegitimate child on Mother Earth. And now, not only, by the way, that this book is not mentioning my birthplace, but now this, whatever it is, it's taken my birthplace from me. Borders are those invented lines drawn with ash on maps and sewn into the ground by bullets. See, Gaza is a city where tourists gather to take photos next to destroyed buildings or graveyards. A country that exists only in my mind. Its flag has no room to fly freely, but there is a space on the coffins of my countrymen. This book was published in 2022. And just look how many things are happening again and again. And by the way, the current situation is even more miserable, of course. So here, for example, when I read my poem that I wrote a few years ago, a country that exists only in my mind, its flag has no room to fly freely, but there is space on the coffins of my countrymen. In the past 16 months, there haven't been any coffins. You know Rifat. Rifat, when he was killed in an airstrike in December 2023, just 2 weeks after I was abducted and released, he was buried. What remained of his body. This is just something new that I knew. What remained of his body, the few of bones, flesh, whatever, before it decomposed, it was put in a blanket, and it was buried just in an open area. And the friends and family there, they spent many days trying to locate where they were buried. Rifat, his 2 siblings and 4 nephews and some other neighbors. So just in death, I mean, sometimes I would say, okay, it's good that we had some parts of Rifat, and that's at least we buried him, because this is the Palestinian tragedy. You know what? You could have the most absurd, the most unjust, the most cruel destiny, and at the same time, a friend or a neighbor or a family member would say, you know, his death was not bad. At least, you know, they found something from his body to bury. Why? Because, I mean, my wife's family, 15 people, they haven't found anything from their bodies. So, okay, so Musab, let's say I lost 30 members of my extended family. And then 2 first cousins with their husbands and their children. Let's say Musab lost X number of immediate family. I would say, well, thank God, you know, 5 members of my family, because, you know, that family next to us, the whole family was killed. This is our tragedy.
Right.
It's like, you know, this bookstore, you know, a thief comes and takes 10 books. It is, maybe it's not a huge loss, but let's say he stole 1,000 books out of 10,000. And then you start to scream, this, what's happening, etc. And then when you learn that, you know, your neighbor who had a bigger bookstore and 100,000 or 10,000 where books were stolen, you would start, you know, I'm bitter, you know, I just lost, you know, 1,000. He lost 10,000. So it start to, you know, to keep your tone down, because the losses of your neighbor were bigger than you. This is what's happening in Gaza.
Yeah.
So this is dehumanizing, by the way.
Yes.
We are even, you know, we don't feel safe, you know, talking about our losses, because the losses of other people who live next to us, you know, are bigger than ours. So we stop talking about our losses. Because you can't, you know, sit at the same room with someone who lost his parents and siblings, and you talk about your lost brother. You know, this is what's happening. Just a few days ago, one Palestinian hostage was released, was abducted after October 7th. He was released, and then his friend, and there's a video of that, his friend was telling him, your parents were killed. And he started to cry, and then he told him, I'm sorry, also your sister and her husband. And he started to cry more and more. And then he told, Wallah al-Azim, I swear to God, this is a video that they posted just three days ago. And then he said, and also your aunt and her husband. This is why I say we have been Gazaned zillion times. So when we talk about loss is not a word. You can't talk about loss without talking about the levels of losses that every one of us is experiencing. This is why poetry for me is important. I hope no one asks me a question, why do you think poetry? No, I answer you, okay? Because poetry redefines the words.
Right.
So there is a word that's called loss. What is loss? Oh, to her, loss is, the loss of her husband. Loss is the loss of his city. So it redefines the word loss. He was killed. No, kill is not a word for me. Because the way that my brother was killed is different than his sister. How long did it take him to die? So it redefines the words. Because I can't say, 5 people were killed in an airstrike. 10 people were killed in an airstrike. Hind Rajab was killed. Hind Rajab was killed. I know. This is not enough. Tell me, there's a story behind this girl who was calling, the Palestinian paramedics, asking them to come and, this is devastating. Hind was killed. Sha'ban al-Dalu was killed. How? He was burnt in a tent. So the word kill, it's not enough. We have to redefine the word by telling the story. And poetry for me is the story. I hope no one will ask that again. D. Dar means house. So this is a new Arabic word for you. Dar means house. You heard the word Darul Bayda, Casablanca. At Dar, it's, Casablanca. Dar, Bayda, white. So the white home. The white home. So it's not the White House. So Casablanca in Arabic means at Darul Bayda. So Dar means house. My grandparents left their house behind in 1948 near Yafa beach. A tree my father told me about stood in the front yard. Before I continue, My grandparents were expelled from Jaffa in 1948, and I still don't know where they lived in Jaffa. I know that they lived in a neighborhood called Al Hilwa, which means beautiful. It's named after a street that is called Al Hilwa. So one of my dreams, other than returning, but I want just to to have a photo, where they live. This is one of my dreams. I'm not even, I'm not asking to return and live. I don't know whether it exists, but I want, some kind of photos, to look where my grandfather Hassan used to live, to see his farm. I just want to see. This is my dream. The first thing I will ask from God when I see him, if I see him, show me, please, play me a video of my grandfather. This is what the first thing I will ask him. I want to see what kind of life my grandfather had. Because he passed away before my father got married. And I only had one or two photos of him. One of them was buried under the rubble of our house in Beit Lahiya. So that's a true thing, it's not a poem. So sometimes poetry is not only poetry, because sometimes poetry, is about your fears, your nightmares, you imagine. But my poetry mostly is grounded in my experience. Dreams of children and their parents, of listening to songs or watching plays at Al-Mishal Cultural Center. Israel destroyed it in August 2018. I hate August. Who was born in August? I'm so sorry. I hate August, but plays are still performed in Gaza. Gaza is the stage. So this poem, it's an old poem. So Gaza is the stage. For Trump, it is a demolition site. For us, it is a stage where our slaughtering took place. It's more than it's not a site, okay? It's not internet. This is not a website. This is not a demolition site. It is our homeland. Whether it is a demolition site or a paradise, we didn't ask for your opinion. We didn't ask you for any suggestion or advice. The one thing that we would ask him or everyone is just to stop supplying weapons to people who made it a demolition site. Hi. Yeah, it's clear. This is a demolition site. Okay, what do? Help us clear the rubble and don't send more weapons to make more cities a demolition site. Thank you for listening. Okay, I'll skip to R. I was born in November. R. I was born in November. My mother told me she was walking on the beach with my father. It turned stormy and began to rain. My mother felt pain, and an hour later she gave birth to me. I love the rain and the sea. The last two things I heard before I came into this horrible world. Tea. Who loves tea? In summer, I drink tea with mint. In winter, I add dried sage. Anyone who visits, even if it's a neighbor, knocking at the door to ask about what day or date it is, I offer them tea. Offering tea is like saying, marhaba, hi. They once said, not including Trump, of course, they once said Palestine will be free tomorrow. When is tomorrow? What is freedom? How long does it last? So that was from, I'll read one more poem to seduce you into buying the book. Do you know the poem, What is Home? And I wrote this poem before our house was something. Okay. What is home? It is the shade of trees on my way to school before they were uprooted. It is my grandparents' black and white photo before the walls crumbled. It is my uncle's prayer rug where a dozen of ants slept on wintry night before it was looted and put in a museum. It is the oven my mother used to bake bread and roast chicken before a bomb reduced our house to ashes. It is the cafe where I watched football matches and played. My son stops me. Can a four-letter word hold all of these? Well, yeah, it can. Back to Forest of Noise. Okay, I will maybe read 3 more poems.
Yeah.
You see it? Okay. Well, I mean, I hope that anyone in Gaza, I mean, this book is not available in Gaza, of course, because, anyway, it can't be in Gaza. But I mean, I hope that anyone in Gaza who reads this poem will not follow my suggestion in the poem, will not follow my advice, because that poem was written for conditions different from post-October 7th. What a Gazan should do during an Israeli airstrike. I mean, I'm not asking them to do this because it is dangerous, but because it will not save them. Okay? What a Gazan should do during an Israeli airstrike: turn off the lights in every room, sit in the inner hallway of the house, away from the windows, stay away from the stove, stop thinking about making black tea, have a bottle of water nearby big enough to cool down children's fear, get a child's kindergarten backpack and stuff tiny toys and whatever amount of money there is, and the ID cards and photos of late grandparents, uncles and aunts, and the grandparents' wedding invitation that's been kept for a long time. And if you are a farmer, you should put some strawberry seeds in one pocket and some soil from the balcony flower pot in the other, and hold on tight to whatever number there was on the cake from the last birthday. So this was written after May 2021. And you can see in the poem, I'm talking about one of my children's birthday parties. And that was Mustafa, who's now 4. And he was born in America. And he's the reason why we could leave Gaza in the first place, before I was abducted. And most of you will, know or maybe wonder, why would people in Gaza all the time when they move from one place to another are holding these, plastic bags and school bags on their backs? Because these are our suitcases.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah, because we don't have airports. Why? It means that we don't need any suitcases, by the way. That's it. The first time I got a suitcase was when I got back from America, by the way, not even before when I left Gaza. No. When I got back from America in 2021. Who would use a suitcase if they don't have an airport, or who never left their country? So that's why people, when they move from one tent to another, or when they return from north to south, or from south to north, they would be carrying, plastic bags, their children. I said that, when I was abducted, I was carrying my child's kindergarten, school bags. And it had the winter clothes. So this is what we use when we travel, from tent to tent. Not from city to city, or from one neighborhood to a neighborhood. So that was what a Gazan should do during an Israeli airstrike. Now I think I should say what a Gazan may want to do during an Israeli, because, not should, because, yeah. Okay, I'll read this poem because it has Arabic in it, and I hope you will like the language of the people who speak, the language that people in Palestine speak, including me. Request letter. He pens a quick letter on paper, a letter as plain in regard to form as possible with no white spaces, and throws it in the graveyard at night. Angel of death, when you collect the souls of those killed in an airstrike, do you mind leaving a sign for us so we know who is who? Because last time my old kindergarten teacher couldn't recognize her daughter's face, which ear or arm or bloody finger on the dusty street was hers. And a father wouldn't recognize which was his child if it wasn't for the size of shoes, 28 European size still on the sole, which he bought her for the new school year. On the back of the paper, he pens the same letter in Arabic, because who could know what language the angel of death uses? The most spoken language in the world, the language of colonization, or the language of God to us in Arabic. Allah, okay? إلى ملك الموت. مصطفى هون مرحبا. إلى ملك الموت. عندما تجمع أرواح من قتلوا في الغارة الجوية، هل تمانع بأن تترك لنا إشارة تدلنا على من هو من؟ لأنه في المرة الماضية لم تستطع معلمتي الكبيرة أيام الروضة أن تتعرف على وجه ابنتها. أية أذن أو ذراع أو أصبع مدمي في الشارع المغبر كان لابنتها. وكذا أب لم يستطع أن يعرف أية طفلة كانت ابنته لولا حجم الحذاء 28 بالمقياس الأوروبي كان منقوشا على نعل الحذاء الذي اشتراه لها للعام الدراسي الجديد. Okay, last poem. Okay, last poem. Under the rubble. I will read this very quick. Okay, I promise. Under the rubble. And this whole poem was written after October 7. She slept on her bed, never woke up again. Her bed has become her grave, a tomb beneath the ceiling of her room, the ceiling a cenotaph. No name, no year of birth, no year of death, no epitaph. Only blood and a small picture frame, only blood and a smashed picture frame in ruin next to her. In Jabalia camp, a mother collects her daughter's flesh in a piggy bank, hoping to buy her a plot in a river in a faraway land. A group, my wife's uncle was killed by a sniper in December, just a few days after Rifat was killed. He was shot by a sniper in Beit Lahia, just as he was trying to enter the school shelter where his wife and 2 kids were staying. And this uncle was born deaf and mute, and he was a teacher for students of special needs. So this is about him. A group of mute people were talking sign. When a bomb fell, they fell silent. It rained again last night. The new plant looked for an umbrella in the garage. The bombing got intense and our house looked for a shelter in the neighborhood. I leave the doors to my room open so the words in my books, the titles, the names of authors and publishers could flee when they hear the bombs. I became homeless once, but the rubble of my city covered the streets. They could not find a stretcher to carry your body. They put you on a wooden door they found under the rubble. Your neighbors, a moving wall. The scars on our children's faces will look for you. Our children's amputated legs will run after you. This is true of so many people, fathers like me and you, and mothers also, parents who went out to get some bread for their kids, but they never returned because they were killed on an airstrike and the bread was around their body. He left his house to buy some bread for his kids. News of his death made it home, but not the bread. No bread. Death sits to eat whoever remains of the kids. No need for a table. No need for bread. A father wakes up at night, sees the random colors on the walls drawn by his 4-year-old daughter. The colors are about 4 feet high. Next year they would be 5, but the painter has died in an airstrike. There are no colors anymore. There are no walls. I changed the order of my books on the shelves. 2 days later, the war broke out. Beware of changing the order of your books. What are you thinking? What thinking? What you? You. Is there still you? Trump, you there? Where should we go? Now he's telling us where to go. But when we were under the bombing, where should people go? Should they build a big ladder and go up? But heaven has been blocked by the drones and F-16s and the smoke of death. My son asks me whether when we return to Gaza, I could get him a puppy. I say, I promise, if we can find any. I ask my son if he wishes to become a pilot when he grows up. He says he won't wish to drop bombs on people and houses. When we die, Our souls leave our bodies, take with them everything they loved in our bedrooms, the perfume, bottles, the makeup, the necklaces, and the pens. In Gaza, our bodies and rooms get crushed. Nothing remains for the souls. Even our souls, they get stuck under the rubble for weeks, and now and for months, unfortunately. Thank you so much.
Wow. Well, let's give Mosab another warm round of applause. I want you to know that your books are not only just on the shelves here, they're part of the kind of the revolutionary ether of this bookstore. We've had a few events, cultural events, where people have discovered your work and recited your poems as part of cultural evenings. We did that for an International May Day and Women's Day. And, I know there was an international student from the People's Republic of China who kind of just was sort of fell in love with the poetry. And she read it in one of our, events that took place here. And I got a message from our YouTube, one of the YouTube viewers, an Iranian, who wrote us in real time as you were speaking tonight, that he was brought to tears. Or she, I don't know, or they, I just don't know. But
thank you so much.
I just want you to know that this is the impact and this is what it means. What I want to do is just ask one or two questions, open it up to the audience. And I do, between the quick conversation that we'll have, I want to make an announcement about this upcoming Cultural Evening of Defiance. Here's my first question. Nature figures so prominently in your poetry. I know tonight you read a poem and we're hearing about pomegranate trees and orange trees and the lapping water of the sea. And I also know that you're a photographer.
Not a professional one.
Oh, okay.
I use my phone. I love to take photos as much as
okay.
To use my language.
But, well, I will say this, your poetry is very synesthetic. All the senses come together in it.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear, about, sort of how the, nature and the animal, what we heard tonight, the animals, it's just very striking to me. How does this, what does this have to do with, the Palestine of today and before, and the Palestine that will not be erased?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that the fact that I lived all my life in Gaza made me, cultivate a relationship with everything around me. The only sea that I knew of was the Mediterranean. The only birds I know that were Palestinians. The only rocks were Palestinians. The only air was Palestinian. So I had this lovely relationship with everything around me. I think because that was my world. And the fact that I never left Gaza until the age of 27, not because I didn't want to leave Gaza, but because the borders were closed and it's always difficult to return to Gaza, even in normal times, before October 7. It's difficult to return to Gaza if you are out because most of the time it's closed, etc. So I think living in Gaza all my life made me pay attention more and more to the things around me. And I think that in Gaza everything has its own life, even the rocks, even the ceiling of our house, even the bed, even the walls of the bedroom, because for me in the poem, not only I was killed, but also the wall was killed. Even the stones themselves, they get amnesia. They even have memories of our lives when we were living inside. So I have this relationship with everything in Gaza, because I think everything in Gaza is holy. Yeah, so that's why I love everything. I pay attention and I offer them, not grant them, but I offer them a place in my poetry.
Yeah, okay, thank you. You are, in addition to being a writer and a scholar, you've also been a teacher. Mm-hmm. And, I know one of the outrageous charges against the student protesters, and we here at Revolution Books were part of that, continue to be part of that, and this store is a welcoming center for all who want to fight the genocide, the US-backed genocide in Gaza and throughout occupied Palestine. But one of the charges against the students is they were disrupting the educational process. And here, the genocide is destroying, right, the educational and cultural institutions. So who's destroying and who's disrupting education? But you've been a teacher. And I'd be, interested in, how what does it mean to be a teacher under the conditions of what you've been, describing in your poetry and what we know to be the case? What does it mean? And I know, I think it was the UN has coined a new phrase, or at least popular, scholasticide, right? The destruction, the willful destruction of the educational institutions. And here you are, a teacher. I'd really like to hear about this.
Yeah. I think scholasticide is not only about the destruction of schools and universities, but it's also about the deprivation of students from of going to schools, because it's been 16 or 17 months and children haven't gone to any schools. And on the contrary, schools have become shelters, and shelters have been associated with death. So this is, they are assassinating not only the schools, but the concept of school. Right. Students haven't been going to school for 16 months. Just imagine if you have a child who is 5 or 6 years old and he's supposed to go, to start his education, and he's not going to school for 16, which is a year and a half of school. So now parents, by the way, when the ceasefire started, some of my friends were looking for teachers who would educate, who would be tutoring their children in tents. This is what we are looking for. We know that the only thing we have, the only power, one of the very few power that we have is to educate ourselves. The Palestinian people lost their land to this Zionist entity. But the only thing that they can take from us is education. So yeah, I lost some of my students in Gaza. In fact, one of them is Hatem, and I put his photo as a wallpaper on my phone. His name is Hatem Za'anin, and one time I was walking to one of my classes in Syracuse, and he sent me a message, or he asked me about, tell me about, your university, what you are studying. And then I turned on my camera on Facebook and I showed him the street, I'm on Euclid Avenue and I'm going, and I showed him the buildings, the dorms, etc. So, he was, I don't want to be unfair to other students, but he was maybe one of the two or the one best student that I had as a teacher in Gaza. He was very, very clever and very polite. You would just, very polite. He is an angel. And how was he killed? He was killed while looking for firewood for his family in Beit Hanun. He was, I think, 14 or 7. I taught him at 7th grade 3 or 4 years ago. And he kept in touch with me when after I left Gaza and I studied. And so yeah, the destruction of schools is not only about the physical destruction of schools and universities, but it's also about depriving students, especially the very young people. Children who are my children's age, 9, 7, and 4, who are now living in tents. What are these people doing? What are these? They are trying to help their parents, make food, or maybe stand in line to fill a bucket of water. Yeah. So the one question that so many people are not asking, of course, this crazy man. Well, so these children have been traumatized for 17 months. They haven't gone to school. Their parents have been maimed or killed. So what do we expect from these people when they grow up? What is the future of these people? Because we are always thinking about the day after. This is one of the things that we have been, we can't stop the war against Hamas, which means against Palestine. This is what they say. Until we figure out, the day after October, the ceasefire. And there is one thing that no one so far has spoken about, which is, have the Zionists before 1940, even have the British regime, when they issued this Balfour Declaration, have they thought about the day after? Have the Zionists, thought about the day after the occupation in 1948? Why haven't they waited until they figured out, okay, let's wait. No, it's dangerous. So there will be 77 years of struggle for freedom. Well, they didn't wait. They just, announced their independence. I don't know independence from whom. And then 1 year after that, they were admitted to the United Nations. Just imagine, you create your state and then you are a member of it. And the people who were occupied, Palestinians, are not a member of the United Nations. So, this attack on education, I think, it's a crime against humanity to destroy the schools and universities, but at the same time, to deprive students of even attending the classes because the circumstances do not allow for any lessons. There is no internet. So many teachers have been killed. So many students have been killed, or they have lost so many members of their families. I think one of the challenges that we have, and unfortunately, this is what we should be talking about after the ceasefire, not getting Palestinians out. No. How do we, get these children back to school, back to normal life? Because these children are the future. We should care about these children. Because they are the future. If you don't talk about the future of the children, then you don't think about the future at all.
Right.
So this is the problem of this world, not even this country, because we haven't heard, we haven't heard from the European countries taking steps, to counter this or to challenge. No. They only condemn. Condemn what? Okay, this man is not speaking; he's doing things. So the way you counter this is not only by speaking, but by doing things.
Yes, and okay. So what I want to do is, first of all, there is no apartheid state of Israel without the backing, support, military underwriting of U.S. imperialism. And we, in the belly of the beast, have a special responsibility to call this out and to oppose it. And here at Revolution Books, you learn about the revolution to actually put an end to overthrow this monster that is U.S. imperialism. I just want to underscore that.